Welcome to What You Missed When You Didn't Exist. I am Corbett, and I am 52.
And I'm Lucy, and I'm 23.
Loses that rhythm, doesn't it? It's fine.
I could say I'm 22 plus an extra year of wisdom.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Well, this time what we're talking about is disco. You got the fever, and it's disco.
Add some more cowbell, maybe?
I don't even know where to start with disco. It feels like it's a pretty broad subject because there's actually a lot of little granular pieces to pick apart.
Well, okay, I've got a question, Dad.
All right, let's go ahead. Start with a question.
In my mind, I feel like disco came along with the era of funk and maybe some other music that I'm not aware of. But what is the difference between disco and funk music?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would probably need a music guy to break that down mechanically.
What? You're not the music guy?
I'm not a music guy. I know disco. Well, no, I don't even know disco really as much as I want to say I do, but I know the era. Disco itself, the music, is a good, I think it's called a 4 on the floor or 4, what's it, a 4 on the floor beat, because it's I presume a 4/4 beat is like an upbeat pop type of sound.
Yeah.
Now, the funny thing is, you mentioned funk, and disco owe its roots back to Motown. And Motown, really, disco started even before I existed, so it is a little out of my area to a certain extent. But, well, the disco itself is from the name discotheque.
In Spanish, discoteca is the club, like you're going to go dancing.
And that's what it was based off of. In Europe, they were discotheques. In Europe in general, they were discotheques. The one that was probably the most notable is the Whiskey A Go-Go, which is in Paris, I think. It might be in Germany. I feel stupid about that one, but that was popular in the 60s. You have to realize a lot of this came from the 50s and the 60s. Disco was around way before America really collapsed onto it, because it didn't start for America until the 70s, when it hit with the Bee Gees and ABBA and Donna Summer. I mean, well, and everybody started kind of clinging to the feel. Disco has a larger sound. It's usually orchestral to a certain degree. They usually add strings or horns or something. Whereas I think funk just kind of sticks really hard to the bass guitar slapping away. You know, thump, 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 thump. And not that that's bad. I'm just like, it's the different take on the same beat structure. The difference there is funk didn't become nearly as popular as disco was in the 70s. When disco was flying high, it was just the way to go. Like, that was when Studio 54 came around, which was another big club that started out in New York. There was the Copacabana, which there was a song that Barry Manilow did about the place.
Is that the one that's in Friends?
It might be.
When Rachel wears the bubblegum bridesmaid's dress and she sings in front of Barry and her best friend that are now married, and she's like, I'm gonna sing the Copacabana.
That is the song. That's the song. But disco was really, really big. It hits peak probably with Saturday Night Fever. John Travolta making his first debut on the big screen, after being a sweat hog for years. You know, John Travolta made it big with that hit movie, Saturday Night Fever. Saturday Night Fever.
Oh.
And Grease. I think he did Grease before. Okay, hold on, wait just a minute. Now you got me thinking.
Wait, well, Grease was taking place in the 50s, but I didn't know when it was shot.
Okay, Saturday Night Fever was released in 77. Grease was released in 78.
Wow, he was busy.
Now, to be fair, Grease was kind of going to hit too, just because at the same time, Happy Days was big. Everybody loved the Fonz. Everybody loved the 50s. The nostalgia for old things in the old times, when people were thinking back to the other old times, was pretty much in full swing too.
What were the other old times? Wait.
The 1950s.
Oh, okay.
People in the 70s were reflecting back on the 50s.
Oh.
And honestly, people in the 80s kind of reflected back on the 60s. I think it's just because the older group that were kids then are now reflecting back to that time, so it becomes the thing. Kind of like everybody's hitting on that 90s, early 2000s nostalgia now, because the adults now were the children then. Welcome to the future. We look backwards.
Look at that.
Disco added a lot of electronic music that was kind of on its way in, just because of the 60s. It set a lot of these things into place. The Village People were really big. I can't tell you how many times I heard the song Macho Man. It's
Not YMCA?
YMCA was big. I mean, the Village People in general. In the 1980 Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year, I remember the Village People and Madonna performing side by side. It was kind of weird.
Wow,
Because
that
it
is
was
weird.
two different genres that were about to collide together. Maybe it was Cyndi Lauper. I could be wrong. But that era was about to change. And all the things from disco carried over into the 80s and became techno and funk and a lot of other things that kind of developed out from there.
Oh, yeah.
But what really killed disco, well, that's the thing. I don't think it was really dead or dying. I think people were just annoyed by it. It's pop music, and they started to really dislike it. But what really put the period on the end of the sentence was in 79. There was a DJ who, what was it? He blew up a whole bunch of records at a baseball game at Kaminsky Park in Chicago. At this doubleheader big baseball game, he blows up a bunch of disco records to celebrate the death of disco.
Why?
That was always the joke. Hey, disco's dead. Hey, disco's gone. Hey, disco's out of here. It's old. It's out. And it's, by then it had reached its 10-year limit, starting in the early 70s for America and going all the way to the end. Disco had reached its time. I really don't hate disco. As much as people want to, disco's stupid, disco's bad. It's just a different type of music, and it's dance music. So, you do you.
People don't dance anymore. What's up with that? People need to go dancing more. People need to let loose. Go shimmy shake, whatever it is you do. Mash the potatoes, right? Yeah.
Well, I think the hustle.
My dance move reference there.
Yeah, I see you there. The hustle is what you're probably shooting for, but go ahead.
Whatever. I wasn't there. No, I'm taking a guess. People didn't twerk in the 70s.
Yeah, there was very little twerking back then. But people were doing a lot of dancing. And honestly, it was kind of interesting. I think that helped spawn a lot of dance-related productions and stuff that came after it, too. But it got Olivia Newton-John her big start.
In disco?
Yeah,
or in Greece?
she started in Greece. Well, she was very well known in Greece, but she did a few songs before that, and that's how she kind of got into Greece.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was a singer. She's a good singer.
I mean, yeah, she is. I just didn't know. I didn't know she was a singer before she became an actress.
Well, I think the big disco film for her was Xanadu, which I think Xanadu was 81. I want to say, hold on. I got to keep looking up stuff.
Someone didn't do their homework.
Yeah. 1980.
Very teachery of you.
In 1980, Olivia Newton-John came out with Xanadu. Xanadu was big, and it was very disco-y with a mix of what the 80s were going to become and the mix of the 30s, because Gene Kelly, I don't know if you remember him from Singing in the Rain.
Oh, yes.
Okay, he was a big 50s musical dance star, and he was a big dancer. In fact, he was very much intimidating on the set from the way I remember Olivia Newton-John saying, he expected just to practice and practice and practice and practice, and I was so tired. And it's so funny because it's young Olivia Newton-John way back when. But the world changed.
The world did change.
Roller discos were a thing.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We'll have to talk about roller discos at some point, because that's a whole other cultural thing I haven't even covered before.
Okay, wait. That's like Gold Member, right?
Right.
From Austin Powers.
Right. Gold Members. You're probably the only reference you have, I guess.
Yeah, the roller disco. That was a roller disco, was it not?
That's true. Fashion that came from it. The bell bottoms that were carried over from the 60s became leisure suits in the 70s with bell bottoms. Women wore more like off the shoulder type stuff, which led into the off the shoulder ragged look that was popular in Flashdance in the 80s.
Yes.
But polyester was in and everything else was out. Drugs were still kind of on the roll from the 60s. I think a lot of this carried over from the 60s. It was like the 60s became polished, because the 60s was rough and scruffy and hippies and all that. But the 70s was shiny and gold and silver, and that's when you saw anytime you'd see a thing about the future, it was straight up a disco reference, with everybody wearing bright silver costumes and electric lights that flickered back and forth, or of course the classic disco ball, which isn't really a disco only type ball. They had those in the 50s, but for some reason in the 70s this big mirrored ball in the middle of the floor became like the thing. And that was the
Because it added to
focus.
the flair, obviously.
It obviously does.
Oh, man. See, that's interesting that you think the 60s are not polished, because I always thought the 60s were more polished than the 70s, because the 60s had the mod girls,
Oh,
like
right.
the prim polished those girls, and then the 70s I thought was more like like crunchy granola of the 60s.
No. You got
I
the
got them
feathered
flipped.
hair came out about then. The
Yeah,
Farrah look came out
yeah.
then. You
It's
know,
like
it's
crunchy granola.
it looks windy to me.
Windy.
The Bee Gees hair, the wave for
Yeah.
men, that was very popular at the time.
I'm thinking like California waves, like granola.
I guess Cher probably influenced some of it too, because I remember a lot of long straight hair, like long straight hair too.
Oh, yeah. That was her big look then.
That was definitely her big look.
With Sonny and Cher, right? That was a 70s thing?
Sonny and Cher had a show in the 70s. They started in the 60s. They were a folk duo.
Mm.
Believe it or not, this all kind of connects together a long way back. I think there was just a lot of hate that got thrown on the disco because it was a pop cultural thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it was quite as horrible as people want to make it out to be. It was fluff like a lot of pop cultural stuff, but it was shiny and pretty and lights were everywhere and everybody was dancing, yeah!
Exactly. What else could there be?
But where are we now, Lucy? What has happened? Is
Oh my
disco still
gosh.
alive in the future? Did it get cryo frozen and has it re-emerged?
Well, we do have the styles coming back, the 70s styles, which I'm super stoked about, because if I was going to be reborn into any era and I would have been in my 20s, I would have had to have been 20 in the 70s. I think it would have been perfect. The bell bottoms, so good. Just a classic. No one needs skinny jeans. You don't need jeans to fit that close to your body. It's just not good. I'm always a sucker for a good shag haircut. It's like messy and kind of almost punky as we like head towards that era, but I think it's nice and relaxed and fun. And like I said earlier, people need to have more fun. We need to bring back disco. We need to bring back dancing and having fun and all those other things. I know I always listen to ABBA. Every single girl on the planet knows a good ABBA song because you just live like that.
Because you're a dancing queen?
Because I am a dancing queen. I may not be 16 anymore or 17, but you know, I'm a sucker for a good dancing time.
Well, it's true. And ABBA they actually had to come back because of the Mamma Mia stage play.
Yeah, Mamma Mia, the musical, and the movies all made a comeback because it's that good.
I'm glad you can endorse it.
Obviously. Everyone knows the 21st night of September because they play it from Earth, Wind, and Fire. I don't know, they still play it at like high school games as a hype up song. Like, hey, do you remember the 70s?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good song.
It is a good song. There's nothing wrong with it. I feel like we're doing a lot of throwback in television as well, whether it be throwing back with Stranger Things to the 80s or throwing it back with, I don't know, all the way back to like the Regency period or looking at the royal family. But we've been doing a lot of reflecting in general.
Well, that's kind of how the show works. Oh,
Well,
you mean culturally. Sorry.
Culturally. Yeah, culturally. Like in movies and television, it's been a lot of looking back into where we were rather than looking towards the future, which I think we did a lot in the 2010s, you know, early 2000s, just because dystopias were kind of big. But I think as a whole, maybe since the pandemic, we've just been doing a lot of reflecting and looking backwards, just nostalgia, looking back at the good old days.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. The world moves on, but we still like to look back sometimes.
No, it's very true. Oh, you know, one thing I forgot to mention, and it's very much, this is very much the kid in me. One of my favorite songs, which was not a top hit, I should point this out, but one of my favorite disco songs was Disco Duck.
Oh
Disco Duck was made
no.
by Rick Dees. He was a DJ who just like made this goofy little song. It was like on a record I had as a kid, and I would listen to it 100,000 times. So because it was a duck. It's the funny
Yeah,
part.
it's a terrible song, by the way. Your mother played it when I went to go visit,
Did
and it
she?
was atrocious. Yeah.
Oh
She
man.
pulled it out on the 8-track
Well, yeah, it's
because we
classic.
had because we had to show my roommate what an 8-track was.
Yeah, another
We
show.
learned that and then listened to an atrocious song.
Disco Duck is such a fun song. Because he likes dancing and he's a duck. I mean, come on.
Well, everyone needs to channel that inner childlike spirit in you and have Disco Duck and dance like a duck that likes disco. Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Definitely.
fine. Just fine. No, it's okay. Okay. So did you have any more thoughts on disco or era-wise or music-wise?
Era-wise,
I was kind of focused on the music in general, but
I mean, that was when Michael Jackson started getting famous, right? Was
yeah, in the
with
70s, he put out his album, I Want to Rock With You, which I think is funny because it's I Want to Rock With You, but it's very much a disco song.
But that was with his family group, right? It was
No, this was his solo.
That was his solo. Oh,
Mhm.
dang, he's old.
By the 70s, he was doing his solo. He was doing his family group way back in the not early 60s, the late 60s and early 70s. But he was teen by the end of the 70s and was ready to kind of start his career. And he did pretty good, obviously.
Whoa, wild. Oh my gosh, actually, something that would connect very well is kind of the constant fandom of Scooby and the Gang and the Mystery Machine. Like throughout all of each of the decades, everyone still has their own version of Scooby and the Gang to pull, and
Right.
that's the epitome of the 70s. May not be disco, but they did play disco music in the live action movies, which I think were very spot on.
Scooby-Doo always kind of follows through a lot of things.
But that's crazy. I didn't think about that.
Well, there's tons of things. Believe it or not, disco was pretty influential. Did a lot of things to and borrowed from quite a bit of influential steps, and then influenced more things as it went. I feel it got kind of a bad rap, but I really don't. I don't hate it as much as people probably want to be hating it. I think it's just easy to hate something.
Yeah.
You can't find yourself, listening to Funky Town and not going, yeah, Funky Town. I'm all about it.
Yes, disco
Or that's the
is
way
not
I
dead.
like it.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is the way, I like it.
Oh, man. We've decided disco's not dead.
It may be on life support, but it's not dead.
Oh, that's terrible.
Well, it's definitely been put away.
Yeah.
I'm sure Taylor will pull something out and make it all happen again.
Oh my gosh, if she could, that would be so amazing. I don't know how she would, but that would be so cool.
I don't know. It's about the odds of like Beyonce doing a country album.
Actually, she just did. That was Cowboy Carter. Have you listened to it though? It's amazing.
Is it?
Yeah,
That's
it's
good.
cool. And you should listen to
Beyonce.
Taylor Swift's new album, The Tortured Poets Department. But it's 2 hours long, so you need to
2
sit down
hours?
and do it. Yeah, she
Holy
released 30
smoly.
songs.
That's a lot of music.
It is, for good reason.
Well, anyway, for anybody out there, listen to disco once in a while. It's not going to hurt you, I promise.
It's not.
But for what you missed when you didn't exist, I'm Corbett.
And I'm Lucy.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.